again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
What is up, everybody? Just like every other podcast, I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, Big Blue. How you doing, my man? How's it going? How was your weekend? It's been a while since I've seen you.
This thing been good, man. Been good. I worked most of the weekend, but at least Saturday we did get to go swimming. So me and the girls went swimming, so it was pretty fun.
Nice, man. That's awesome, dude. It's been hot out, so gotta stay cool, man. Gotta stay cool. You know? I think a couple of weeks ago, the heat index out here in San Antonio, Texas, got up to 122 degrees. Well, at least in the part of San Antonio, I'm on the outskirts of San Antonio, so that part of it, up in the hill country area, we got hit with 122, 117, somewhere in between there. I know at the airport it was 117. So
yeah, no, it's been warm, man. Luckily, since I work overnight, I sleep throughout most of the heat. But yeah, when I had to run errands during the day, I don't miss picking up the kids at 3 o'clock no more. You know what I mean?
Nah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, guys, today we're going to be going back into the Bryan Kohberger case. There's been a lot of titles that have gone out saying new details emerge and breaking news, and so we decided to see what all the hype is about and kind of break down what all these breaking news shows and clips and content has been all about. And necessarily, and so far from what I've seen, it's been a lot about Howard Bloom's recent book, When the Night Comes Falling. Here's my copy right here. You can see the back part of it. I got it in yesterday. To my surprise, I didn't think I was going to get it till today, and I went through a lot of it already.
Nice.
And it's interesting, and I haven't read it all, but I have seen a couple of, or at least one interview that Howard Bloom did earlier with Nancy Grace, referencing what's kind of in the book and what we've seen. And the first thing that they talk about, Big Blue, is that according to friends of relatives of Michael Kohberger, I think that's the way it's written in the book. So it's not first person. So we all have to take that with a grain of salt. It's according to friends of family members of Michael Kohberger's that that Michael Kohberger was suspicious of Bryan Kohberger prior to him flying out there. He thought that maybe, given some of the problems that he had in with his son in the past, that he thought that was a possibility. Like, I don't know about you, Blue, but what would your kid have to do back in that child's past that would make you think or consider that they would be capable of a quadruple homicide?
It must have been something pretty bad, but I think to the dad, it might have been more like, they were looking for his style car, and that was the most alarming part to me. Like, hey, my child owns that kind of car, and he had some issues in the past, and maybe he showed other signs before this happened. You know what I mean? From him doing his case studies, because as parents, you get like a third sense that something is up with your kid or something's wrong with them, and they're doing something wrong because when they call you or when you're talking to them, they are talking a certain way. They're doing certain things to avoid certain questions. So Maybe he got that feeling.
Yeah, yeah, and it's possible. I mean, I'm gonna look at the book right now. You know, the book kind of says, and it starts off talking about how, you know, he was concerned about meeting his son, and he was also super proud at the same time, right? That, you know, he was already calling or alluding or calling him Dr. Bryan Kohberger to his friends, or referring him to as Dr. Bryan Kohberger. And you know, he's talking about those things, but even his mom, Marianne, stated that the Bryan Kohberger's teenage years were described as complicated, and apparently there was quite a bit of issues, and it all kind of, you know, in the book it goes into Bryan Kohberger's past, talks about his heroin addiction, some of the issues that he had, talks about some of the writings that he put out there as a young adolescent, referencing how he lacked emotion. When he looked at people, he saw them as like meat sacks, didn't care. And the only ounce of regret that he had, and it says this in the book, is that Bryan Kohberger had wrote down something to the effect that he treats his dad like dirt, and that his dad is a good man, and for that he hates that he does it, and he can't take it. So that's the only ounce of regret that he has ever shown in some of his writings, was towards the treatment to his father. You know what I'm saying? And so
and I'm pretty sure, I mean, with the drug addiction and all that, he was not a good person to be around, especially, you know, when people with those kind of addictions are like weaning off, or they're getting withdrawals, man, they turn into some really nasty people.
Yeah, no, they do.
Especially if he was, like, you know, stealing his family members' stuff to try to score some drugs, and then I'm pretty sure he wasn't happy with his parents when they sent him to rehab. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, this goes into that. It talks about how Michael had, it says his 19-year-old boy was just out of control. The arrest he wanted to believe would be a wake-up call, and this is referencing the arrest when he was 19 years old for the theft of his sister's phone, which he went and he paid somebody to give him a ride to the mall so that he can go to a kiosk and sell the $400 phone for $200. And when Michael Kohberger had basically said that he was going to call the cops, Bryan said, don't do anything stupid or something to that nature. You know, and it was just kind of like, he talks so much about, and again, this is all coming not from Michael Kohberger. This is coming from friends of relatives of Michael Kohberger. All right, here it is. I found it. So it says, but there was no disputing that it sure took its toll on the teenage Bryan. If his online posts were a reliable guide, a visual snow had buried him under an avalanche of unhappiness. Day after downhearted day, he went on the web to shout out his calls from the wild. And this is what it says that he had written down on his website. It says, I feel like an organic sack of meat with no self-worth. I am starting to view everyone as this. Everything I have ever done makes no sense. How did things get this way? I always feel as if I am not there, completely depersonalized. Constant thoughts of suicide, crazy thoughts, delusions of grandeur, poor self-image. It's like I have severe brain damage. I am stuck with the depth of my mind where I have to constantly battle my demons. And continues, it says, this is what Bryan Kohberger wrote on the website. It says, as my family hugs and celebrates, I am stuck with this void of nothing, feeling completely no emotion, feeling nothing, feeling dirty, like there's dirt inside my head. I think about my father, what a good man he is, how I treat him like dirt, because I have this condition and I can't take it. And then it says, whatever I want I can do whatever I want with little remorse. So, sounds like a very troubled teenage or young adolescent man.
This is a troubled individual overall. And some people get out of that phase. But like we were talking about, we covered it here a couple months ago. Just a brief little mention of it. Remember, there was a big deal about this character from New York. How he was a ex-convict, and he had gotten released because he had commenced the order out as a drug dealer to have somebody taken out. And after that, he's like, oh, I'm a good guy, I changed my life. He started working as a youth not a youth counselor. Yeah, youth counselor.
Mhm.
Youth counselor. And I remember it was the one that he ended up killing that I think it was a friend of his, and ended up having, taking the body out in a bag. And you see him go disguised to the apartment a few times to take out the different body parts and bags.
Mhm.
And because that stuff messes you up, man.
Yeah,
And he said half the time he was on drugs, so he didn't remember some of the stuff.
it's true. Iona says he sounds like most teenage guys I knew who are now successful. BK was crying out for help. I mean, he may have been crying out for help. I know a lot of successful people, quite a bit, quite a bit of millionaires, and I don't know anybody who felt like they were an organic sack of meat. Narcissistic maybe, very much so, but the feeling of self-pity and self-worth of being nothing is not one of those feelings of successful people. That's usually the opposite. Now, he turned it around. Obviously, he turned it around. He became a PhD student, and the turnaround happened after his dad had him arrested for the theft. He went to rehab. I think it was his second time going to rehab. The first time, apparently, according to Howard Bloom, it was just kind of like a half-hearted thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. He turns it around there, but and he goes into detail about this. And I mean, I think Bryan Kohberger did this. I think he did it. I don't like him because I think he did it. But at the same time, they talk about how he lost a lot of weight and that his skin was so saggy that it covered his genitals. I don't understand, one, how he knew that, and two, why is that important?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's pretty weird to put that in a book.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. But it also, it's to break down of why, because a lot of people have self-conscious about their weight and their body, and that stuff puts people in really dark places, man. So that might be trying to put his mental mind point where it could be at. But I think it's, to me, it does seem like it is him. But we got to go to court. We got to listen to everybody, and he still got to get sorry, I have my phone here charging because it was dying.
No, you're good, man.
Like he's beating and he's got to get judged by his peers, but in the court of law. So I think but it gives you a mindset of where he was when he was younger. He was out of control teen, drug user, had
Thief.
probably an attitude, a thief, like you said, and all that puts paints a different picture of the all-American boy that some people are making him out to be.
That's true, because the description of how he was in his earlier days is not one that I guess let me you'd be more surprised that he became a PhD student than he got himself in trouble with the law. That's in my opinion when you look at his adolescent years. Now, to kind of bring what he did say about, or what Bryan Kohberger was saying, to present day. Now, this was a quadruple homicide. 4 people were murdered. There was a camera 50 feet away that didn't capture the sounds of somebody yelling or screaming in rage or anger, any of those things. It's very much emotionless sounds. You hear a thud, maybe a whimper. Dylan saying that she hears somebody saying, "I'm here to help you." That's not, and obviously we know what the outcome was. So whoever it was that was in there doing that, you would say that they would probably be heartless, maybe perhaps have a problem with their emotions, have a problem with remorse, seeing people as an organic meat sack. I just think that if this wasn't in there, right, if he had a childhood and an adolescent and a young adult life that was more pristine, more perfect, more of the average American boy, like you were mentioning earlier, I think it'd be less likely to believe that he would commit something like this. But given his statements about how he felt and the depersonalization, I would say that the person that committed these crimes would also have something similar going on. What do you think, Blue?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what kind of mindset somebody can have and what pictures you can paint with their state of mind at that time. And with his state of mind, with his past and what he knows and what he's been trained with, can he pull something off like this? Yes. Did he make one major error by leaving the knife sheath? Yeah. I think if they wouldn't have had that, it would have been a lot longer before they found out who he was. I'm pretty sure there was pictures of the car, and they would have gone down the steps, but it would have taken a lot longer than what it took to find them.
Yeah, it would have taken longer. I agree to that, but I do think that he would eventually would have gotten caught, and I don't think it would have been as long, as long as maybe people would think. I don't think it would have turned into a cold case. Given his behavior at WSU, the arguments, the fighting with the teachers, the accusations from his PhD students and other female students that were under, in his class or that he was teaching. I think that somebody would have kind of put 2 and 2 together, like, hey, this guy's kind of nuts. I mean, they talk about it in the book. He talks about how Michael Kohberger gets there and he tells him how he wants to go the traditional route, the going through, it's more like the northern part of the United States.
Yeah, let's say straight across.
Yeah, but that Bryan Kohberger wanted to go south and through the Rocky Mountains, which is more dangerous, especially during the wintertime. And that, according to the book, Bryan Kohberger got real angry at him and got real vicious to the point where Michael Kohberger backed down from him. And it was merely for the direction that they wanted to go. Do you think that, I thought the reason he went that way, well, first and foremost, his alibi says he's in Wawawai Park, right? Wawawai Park is the area where Joyce LePage, her body was found. She was a student for WSU back in the 70s. And it has been speculated that this could have been Ted Bundy's first murder. Now, Ted Bundy ended up killing somebody in Grand Junction. And then again in some other part in Colorado. Now, Bryan Kohberger's alibi, he's saying that he was out there in the same area where Ted Bundy possibly could have started his murder spree. Now, I know a lot of people in the comment section might say, oh, there's no evidence that it was Ted Bundy, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter if it was Ted Bundy or not. What matters is, did Bryan Kohberger think it was Ted Bundy? And if he did, and then he goes through Grand Station and he's arguing about going through there, and that's the same path that Bundy took, what do you think about that, Blue?
I mean, it's pretty interesting. I would think he probably if he knew that they were looking for, no, just this is just speculation. If he knew that, hey, they know that there's a night sheet there, there's a possibility that there might be a fingerprint, or there might be something on it, or he knew, hey, they're looking for my type of car. He might have just wanted to go for one more last big drive, see the Rocky Mountains. I don't know, but or he could have been, following the trail that Bundy could have taken,
I think it's possible, man.
or the road trip that Bundy could have taken. Not a trip.
In the Nancy Grace interview with Howard Bloom, they talk about the possibility of him thinking they might be watching him and him trying to elude the investigation by going south. I really don't see how, if they're watching him, that would make a difference if he went south, if he went west, if he went east, if he went north. You know what I mean? They're watching him. Now, obviously, my suspicion here is that they didn't know who he was until December 19th. December 19th, he was already in the Pocono Mountains. December 19th is when the IGG came back. And it's no secret or surprise to me. It's no surprise to me when Detective Payne is testifying, saying that he contacted the WSU officer December 20th, who had made contact with Bryan Kohberger's vehicle back in November 29th, almost a month earlier. And so, if you get the IGG back on the 19th and you're calling the guy on the 20th, what does that mean, Blue? He barely figured out who it was. I don't think it's rocket science. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
to connect those two dots. And so I don't think they were following him or watching him at all at that time. And once they had the IGG back and then they looked him up, found out they issued him a citation, they probably entered his license plate into the database that he had on the citation that he had. And at the time of the citation that he had P8 plates. And I'm sure that when they pulled that up, it came back as Washington plates. And I'm sure that because, well, let me put this, I know that there, when you enter into those type of databases, those type of things, when you look it up on a police computer, all of it populates. So he probably saw that this vehicle was stopped out by this officer at WSU and called them to say, hey, what'd you notice? What'd you see? Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? To me, there's no doubt in my mind that's when they started to look at him. But they talk about him possibly going that way to lose police, and I think that he wasn't sure if they were following him or not. In fact, in the book, it talks about how when they're getting stopped by the Indiana State Police, that Michael Kohberger was kind of worried that it might be because of what happened in Moscow.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long trip to take with somebody.
Yeah.
And you never know if he maybe said something to his dad that alluded to that. But it didn't seem like it, because when he got pulled over, the dad he seemed a little worried, but not as, I don't know. I got to rewatch the videos to see his reactions.
Well, I mean, I think when you see the demeanor of the officer, you can tell right away that it wasn't planned. You can tell right away that the officer has no idea that Bryan Kohberger is a quadruple homicide suspect, just based on the demeanor of both officers. If FBI asks you to pull over somebody, well, first and foremost, they're not asking you to pull over somebody because they suspect they stole a bike. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's a reason, right? And it's usually a really good one. So if the FBI is asking you to pull over a vehicle, you're not going to approach this vehicle all nonchalant, hand off your gun, and then put your hands inside the car and your head in the car. That is a completely officer safety issue. In fact, I would have dinked the guys for officer safety regardless if it was, they suspected him of just following a vehicle too close. In that type of situation, an officer can get severely hurt or more by putting himself in that position. And so you definitely don't put yourself in that position if you know that the person that you're pulling over is a suspect for quadruple homicide. Because the other thing too is, although the FBI might be asking you to pull him over just to check his hands, he don't know why you're pulling him over. And if he's the one that committed the crime, he may assume that you're pulling him over for the crime that he committed. And, you don't know as an officer if he's armed, dangerous, or any of those things. He took the lives of 4 people allegedly, so he must be dangerous. So,
Yeah.
just looking at those things in totality, there's no way in hell that it makes sense that the FBI or anybody asked those officers to pull over Bryan Kohberger's vehicle twice in Indiana. If you go and look at his driving history from Washington and in that area, seems like he gets pulled over a lot. Maybe he's just a bad driver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems like it, because I've, knock on some wood here, I haven't been pulled over in a while for doing dumb stuff. And sorry, that's my dog.
Oh, you're fine, man. So, I don't think there was any indication there. So for me, December 16th or any of those days, they weren't following Bryan Kohberger. Now, I know that there's a spot that says that they spotted Bryan Kohberger cleaning his car, malitiously, I'm sorry. And, very with bleach and stuff. I don't think that it was necessarily the officers who saw that as much as possibly his family members who saw that and were concerned. And after his arrest, or maybe even before, kind of maybe spoke about some of the suspicions that they had. I mean, there is a lot of talk about confidential informants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the family probably did get questioned and investigated over certain things. How did they find out that he was wearing gloves at home? Somebody must have said something. How did they find out? Or I'm pretty sure that they were watching him when he was cleaning his car. But wearing the gloves at home and wearing the gloves and throwing his trash in the neighbor's trash can is pretty suspicious. If the family saw that, they'd be questioning a lot of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be like, why the hell are you wearing gloves at home? We're all clean people, Like,
I mean, the other thing too is like, you're trying to hide your DNA while you're hiding in a house full of people that have your DNA. Like, where does that make sense, Blue? Where does that even make sense? You know what I'm saying? But
yeah, but by that time, it's hard to say what's going on through his mind, but maybe he had a breakdown of some sort, and maybe that's just his normal way of thinking of, I don't know. Like, I don't know why, but I've seen people do that. I mean, I've seen people till this day go to the grocery store and they're wearing gloves when they're shopping. They're plastic gloves on their hands when they're holding the carts. They wipe down the shopping cart before they even walk in the store. And we all did that during COVID, but people are still doing that today. Even COVID's still around. Trust me, I've been seeing it lately.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but you would think that his family members, if that was something that was common, wouldn't find it suspicious, don't you think?
Yeah. If it was common, then they'd be like, okay, he does this all the time. But they thought it was suspicious from sources that we've heard of. The other thing is,
they also hold on. They also said, the family, in their statement, their actual statement says, we have fully cooperated with law enforcement. I don't know what else to tell you,
Now the other thing is, like, the interactions with when he went to the pool party. Everybody would thought it would have been weird if he would have been with gloves on. So he didn't start using gloves until a certain point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imagine going to a pool party and being there with a mask and gloves on.
You're right.
And if he was such a paranoid, person about being clean, how come he don't have gloves on during his hearings? or a mask if he was such a germaphobe.
Yeah. Angel or Afton asks, does the book state at the beginning that it contains theories as opposed to facts? I don't think it does. There was something to the reader, but I didn't really read it. I read the stuff. I went to chapter 1. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't want to read that stuff, but I don't think so. But he talks about where he gets his stuff, his sources. So he's getting these this information isn't just coming out of the air. It's not a thought. These are things that were told to people that he interviewed by people that are close to the Kohberger family. Now, I would take it with a grain of salt. I would say that perhaps it might be exaggerated a bit because that's usually what happens in most stories that aren't first person. Even first person stories end up getting exaggerated over time. So I would take that with a grain of salt, but I would say that there's probably a hard truth behind almost everything there.
Yeah, I was gonna say he probably, knowing Bloom, he probably interviewed quite a bit of people, and he probably took the most information that was repeated and sounded right, sounded truthful, and he used that. But it's hard to tell, some people record their interviews, so maybe he has all that, and there's always documentaries and movies that'll come out later, and he'll say more.
Yeah, no, there is. He also went out there early on, right? He was there before things got too crazy, before all these rumors, the Kohbergers, the whole thing, all this stuff that's just gone out of whack. You know what I'm saying?
We even started following it.
Yeah, he was out there, and he was talking to people close to the case and people that were close to the area, close to some of these people that were involved. And I'm not saying that everything he's saying is true. I don't know. I think there is a lot of his thoughts in there. In fact, what he says about Bryan Kohberger driving around and it being something about his mind trying to, I guess was the word, like build up the courage to do it. You know what I'm saying? That was him just kind of doing that. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I mean, it's no coincidence that, well, let's put it this way. He drives around 3 different times and he doesn't do anything different. On the 4th time, he stops, he does a reverse in front of, Queen 507, apartment 507, and then he goes back the way he came, which is very different than the other 3 times that he did it. According to the PCA, it picks up at that point, and we find out that he tries to park in front of the house but isn't able to. And then he goes and does a 3-point turnaround in the King Queen Road intersection. So something between the 3rd and the 4th pass around changed. Well, we know that a DoorDash order was dropped off in between then. So I know that some people have some weird perception of time. Like they think that if somebody drives in there at 3:56 to drop off a DoorDash order, that takes like 10 minutes to do. And a lot of people think that like 11 minutes is equal to like, I don't know, 3 minutes in real time. It's weird. And there's been people that have driven through here to get from the King Queen Road intersection to drive around the apartment complex and to get back and driving at regular speed there, looking for things, because these were for YouTubers that were, going very slow, trying to find things and look for clues. It took 40-some seconds. So for somebody to pull in there, park, get off and drop something like food or drink or whatever it may have been, get back in their car and go at 4:00. I don't think that's, maybe 2 minutes at most. And if he was there at 3:55 and then not again till 4:05, and that happened somewhere in between, there's a good opportunity or a good chance there that if there was like a light on to indicate to the DoorDasher that, hey, this is where, this house is, because it's a little confusing. The street faces Queen, but it's called King Road. So here's my light on. And then they get their order and turn that light off. He don't know. He's not psychic. He don't know that they picked up their DoorDash. All he probably thinks is they fell asleep. and now it's go time. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah, I think it that can be one of the factors. The other thing is it takes courage to build up sometimes, or nerves that are in your system. So I've seen, I read other stories about other I guess murderers that their first time was nerve wracking for them. That they sometimes observed the person's place a few times. Some of them just went for it. But I think if you're trying to plan it, you want to make sure that there's maybe a car spooked them, maybe the light turning on, maybe the DoorDash guy, like I said, coming by spooked them. He's I can't park in the driveway, block it, because he wouldn't know that the DoorDash is coming, but maybe he saw the headlights coming down the street and it's like, oh, I gotta move, gotta get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but I think that he did have that moment of building up courage. And I think that moment happens on the Linda Lane camera. That moment where he stops in front of apartment 507, he stays there for about 12 seconds. 12 seconds is a long time. It's not, I mean, people can think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 12 seconds. That's probably like 2, 3. I mean, if I started 12 seconds now, I'll let you know when we get back to it. He stood there for 12 seconds thinking about what he was about to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now we're at 12 seconds. It's a pretty good amount of time to be just sitting there in front of somebody's apartment before you start moving, right? That's not counting the time it took for him to go forward and the time it took him to back up and the time that it took him to turn and go the other way. The entire amount of time that he was in that small little parking area. Just 12 seconds that he stopped, the vehicle ceased motion, and then when it started to move again. And Sissy comes in saying, everyone hit that like and subscribe. I also saw True Crime Time. I saw True Crime Time out there in the live chat earlier. I meant to pull up his chat, but it was moving pretty fast. He's going to be on the show on Friday again. We're going to be talking about the evidence in the case and strictly the evidence. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you hit that like, subscribe, follow, ring that notification bell, the whole 9 yards. Thank you, Sissy, and for being a member and a mod. We appreciate you. And Jeff, our newest mod, says if BK could see the little lever on the kitchen sliding door and it was unlocked position, I'm thinking it was go time. Maybe. I mean, it's possible. Maybe he saw that it was broken, right? And maybe on other occasions he had seen the stool being utilized to block the glass door. And on this specific night, that stool would be large enough to notice if it wasn't in the door. I don't know about the little lock, but a stool would be noticeable from a distance. And there was those lights on outside in the back. They had been on when we have pictures of the officers arriving and stuff like that. So I'm assuming they were on throughout the entire night, and that could have given him enough to see the stools, whether they were there or not.
Yeah. I mean, if he cased the place out like we think he did, then he probably would have noticed that if it was a common thing that they would use to block the door from being opened.
Yeah. Ozzy also says that those sliders are easy to break into. That's very true too. That is very true. And Sissy comes in with a gifted Drunk Turkey Show membership. Guys, we're going to do the member stuff only, member only stuff again here coming up probably this weekend. This last week or so, and the reason why I'm not doing anything on Mondays is because my schedule got kind of turned around, so to speak. And I for those that are Steeler fans, I also cover the Steelers on 2 different YouTube channels. One, State of the Steelers, that's my own, and the second one is called Steel Curtain Network. I only come out on that on Monday, and it's actually taking my 7:30 slot. So if you want to catch me on Mondays at 7:30 again, You can catch me on Steel Curtain Network. We'll be talking about the Steelers and not anything crazy. Know what I mean? All right. So in this book, though, Blue, and I wanted to cover this because I thought this was interesting because I didn't expect to see this here. Howard Bloom goes into detail about Bryan Kopaka. And I was like, he's gonna actually, first and foremost, how do you feel about Bryan Kopaka being brought up in this book?
I mean, everybody has a freedom of speech, man. But you know how I feel about bringing that up because we've been dragged through the mud because of Bryan Kohberger, even though we didn't say nothing about him. Somebody came on our panel and said something about it, and we came out on Nightline for that one, and we came out on the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Even the BBC wanted us to come out on their, and it was to drag us through the mud. So,
they were like, "Well, man, we got you. We're not like those other people." I'm like, "Yeah, right. That's what the other people said." Netflix, we turned them down too.
Yeah. When we're getting interviewed by the reporter from Nightline or whatever it is, I saw a turn and I was like, "Yeah,
dude, I knew we screwed up. Like, well, obviously, like when they started asking you questions, but when you were getting prepped and you sat there and I couldn't talk to you no more, and the one lady comes up and says, "Yeah, we're the ones that did the Liver King. Man, we totally got him on this, and the third, and we broke him down on this." And I was like, "Oh man, y'all are hit pieces." I was like, that's the first thing that went through my mind. I was like, man. And then I thought, you know what? These folks are lying about who we are and what we do and what we represent. And if they want to tell these people we're these bad guys and talk all these conspiracies and all these things, maybe that'll get the word out to some people that, you know, they'll actually come and watch and see for themselves that we're not like that. Now, I put into the chat because somebody asked for the links to both Steel Curtain Network and State of the Steelers. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what's in the book. It starts off talking about that during the drive back to Pennsylvania from Idaho, that at one point Bryan Kohberger asked his father to check the weather, right, to see what was going on up ahead. And when he did that, Michael Kohberger saw that there was an alert, WSU alert about Bryan Kopaka. And he thought to himself that, you know, what in the world is going on out in the West, on the west side of the country? You know, 4 people had just been killed the month earlier, and now this. And so at that point, it kind of goes into what happens with Bryan Kopaka. And I don't want to read all of it. I just want to read some of the bullet points here that I had seen. All right. It's at around 8 the previous evening, an off-campus coffee house apartments, an ugly 3-story complex offering utilitarian student housing that was only a stone's throw away from this similarly stark development where Bryan lived. And Michael had just camped out for an uncomfortable night. And I remember they got into a big fight. He was only there for one night, and they got into a huge fight. According to this, he got into a huge fight, and it was about the directions. And then Bryan Kohberger was pretty fierce. So it continues, a rifle-toting resident that threatened to kill his 2 roommates. Whitman County Regional SWAT team came in heavy, an 18-ton armored mine-resistant ambush-protected MRAP in military parlance vehicle had lumbered down the snow-dusted Latah Street in the starry night. So there is stars at night. Just kidding. In the starry night, and positioned itself directly opposite of the building where 2 students had been held hostage. All right, so according to this, there was a couple of students that were held hostage against their will. And then painted in big black letters, tank-like vehicle, khaki-colored hood, were the initials JRD, which was for Deputy Justin DeRosser, who had passed away on a routine stop, and kind of just being a remembrance that there's nothing really routine, which is kind of like what I was talking about earlier with those Indiana stops. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it says 222, the command from the team's tactical leader screeched over the walkie-talkie, and immediately about a dozen heavily armed cops began blocking the perimeter. Keep returning students and passerby well clear the complex. At the same time, officers began escorting bewildered students out of the building into the wintry night. A makeshift shelter had been hastily set up in a Beasley Coliseum, a university athletic area. By now, a negotiator had gone through the apartment on a phone line. The gunman identified himself as Brent Kopaka. He was talking a mile a minute and not much that he said made any sense. All the negotiator could make out was panic, rage, and chaos. The curacy bio of the sheriff's office had pulled over Kopaka, pushed the threat level up another notch. He was a 36-year-old former U.S. Army paratrooper. Man, I'm freaking
Paratrooper.
I've been reading all day, guys. Paratrooper.
Paratrooper.
Who had served in Afghanistan. He returned with a Purple Heart, which is this is the sad thing, you know what I mean? And this is the part that where he's a Purple Heart. He served our country. He should have been getting help.
Yeah, and that's the part I was going to bring up. Yeah, I was going to bring up it. Joking aside and non-joking aside, the serious part is he's a ex-military vet who needs help, who needed help, and there's a lot more of him out there that need help. You know,
yeah,
that's one of the things that a lot of vets go through is PTSD, and there's not enough help for them out there.
Yeah, I mean, and this guy, he had a Purple Heart, which means he got severely injured. I mean, they don't give you a Purple Heart just for going over there, you know. And according to this, he had a traumatic brain injury that happened. I thought it'd say what happened. He had a traumatic brain injury and a tormenting case of PTSD. He'd been trying to shake it off for the past 16 years. In fact, it says here that the last time the local cops had encountered Kopaka, he had been belligerently arguing with a voice rising up from under a manhole cover. So, I mean, if you're an officer, you see something like this, and you're seeing this guy being belligerent, and you're seeing him talking to a manhole cover, you should call mental health. I mean, out here it's mental MHMR, which is mental health, and well, it's called mental health, and MMHR. And those were people who were like psychologists and to come help out individuals who were going through an episode similar to what is being described here. I don't understand why those precautions weren't made. Once they found out he was a vet, you know, maybe perhaps try to get in touch with the VA. But, you know, the VA it's its own thing too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I hear some of the stories of they're understaffed, overworked, but things are getting better. They have some new administrative, like bosses that are changing formats, and I think just here in San Antonio, there's 2 new VA buildings to help out with because we are a military city, they call us, so we have a few bases.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of vets here that, you know, come back and retire, and it's sad because you see it all the time on a lot of the homeless people that are asking for money. A lot of them ask money, and they're wearing their vet hats or their vet shirts saying they were military vets and they need help. But sometimes people do that just to get more money, so it's hard to tell the truth, man.
Yeah, I mean, but I think especially for our vets who are suffering from PTSD from something that they, an incident that occurred while defending our freedoms. Like, there should be more. There should be way more. It shouldn't be up to them to come to the VA and say, hey, I'm not feeling good today. There should be some sort of like checkup, you know what I mean? And routine checkup, especially if somebody has been diagnosed with something like this.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
I just find it hard. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are in the military, a lot of family. Myself, I was in the military as well. And so it's just something. All right. So this continues to say that the resigned mood among the frontline SWAT officers held that things could very quickly go from bad to worse, and the SWAT team better move in while there was still hope for getting the hostages out alive. But as SWAT leader was poised to issue the go order, two of the hostages walked out of the building. Kopaka had told him to get the hell out before he changed his mind. And just like that, the team exhaled. The cops fell back, taking cover behind the bulk of the MRAP or crouching low in the heavy shadows cast by the wall of interconnected apartment buildings. They'd wait and they let the negotiator talk the guy down. Then the shooting started. From the second floor window, Kopaka began firing a long-barreled weapon towards the MRAP. When a bullet found its mark, it pinged off the armor plating, echoed sharply through the taut night. And Kopaka was ranting, angrily, largely incoherent. Messages boomed out. Things had gone beyond reason. The order came to open fire, and now the tree-lined, college-torn street crackled with the echoes of battle. The firefight went on the sporadic intensity for a while, but before dawn, the decision was made. 7 hours was enough. Things had to be resolved before students headed back to class. Take him out, the SWAT commander ordered at about 4 a.m. Had there been any thoughts about firing tear gas through the apartment window, a volley of stun grenades, or simply playing things long, letting a decorated Army veteran continue firing until he ran out of either ammunition or rage? Now, letting him continue to fire is not an answer. You can't do that. I understand he's going through some stuff, and I do agree there should have been, some smoke grenades, light grenades, or even like some
stun grenades.
Yeah, that's pepper balls. Those are very effective. I've used them before. You throw them. They have them in a couple of different ways. You can do it like a little grenade thing, and it pops out, and a bunch of pepper balls come out. It's like a bunch of pepper spray. And you can also put it into like a paintball gun and shoot it in there. And if you hit your target, it not only hurts and stings, but it also administers the pepper spray. So I don't think letting him just shoot off rounds in anger, because one can ricochet off of something and kill someone. So that's not the answer. But I do think that to go from, all right, just kill the guy, without trying these other things, the hostages were already out. There was nobody else in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it just, I don't know. There's a lot of different training that they go through, but I understand when they're getting shot at, they're going to shoot back. That's the main thing. But there's other stuff that they could have tried, but who knows if they had access to that stuff.
That is true. Access to those things is a possibility. The pepper ball stuff and the stuff that I'm aware of, those are all given by grants. And the department that I worked for was multiple times bigger than Pullman and Moscow. So the grants were a lot more. And I don't know if they would have had those. And, given the proximity to the border, or just because Texas is on the border, we were afforded some of these extra things versus what you would get in Moscow, which is a rural area, and or Pullman. So you're right. It could be a resource thing.
Yeah, because most of the time, like you said, if they gave the order to shoot, most SWAT teams have a sniper. And somebody shooting out the window, the sniper would take them out. So I don't know That would have been a easier or a quicker way to disarm him. I mean, you didn't have to be a headshot. It could have been an arm shot or.
Well, you're not trained to do that. I mean, if you miss, trying to shoot somebody in the arm and you hit somebody else, you're completely liable for that.
Yeah.
So officers are trained to eliminate the threat.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
but they cleared the buildings, and they shouldn't have worried too much about that.
Well, I mean, if he misses, it bounces off the floor, it hits the pipe, and hits your partner in the head next to you. That's a problem. Yeah. So, you don't do that. You're trained as an officer. Eliminate the threat. If you shoot the guy and you just so happen to hit him in the shoulder and he drops the gun and he falls to the ground, you don't continue to shoot him. The threat has been eliminated as long as the gun's far away from him. Right now, you shoot the guy center mass, he still has a gun in his hand, still walking towards you because he's on PCP and he's not feeling anything and he's out of control and he's just going and you're laying into him, pop, 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 and he's still coming. And to eliminate the threat, that's what you have to do. Another real life scenario would be like one that I have seen personally was an issue where an 18-wheeler was heading towards some officers. Officers shot at the 18-wheeler and they ended up killing the driver. Now, that was justified, but to the public, they thought it was weird or odd because there was something like 250 shots fired into the cab there. But what they don't understand is until that vehicle stops moving, there's still a threat.
Yeah.
And they don't know if he's actually down or if he's not down. You can't tell. Those things are impossible. But one last thing that's interesting about this, it says the answers to those questions remain hidden in the police area law enforcement critical investigation response team report that was finally filed 6 months later and immediately stamped confidential. So we'll never know what's on there. Yeah. We'll never know. So I got a couple things I had started real quick. Daniel, do you think when Payne answered and saying there's no video of the car, he was just saying that on the route and asked if there was no video, but there's no other routes where there is? All right. So when she said, is there footage or video footage out there? And they said there was no video. There was no, at first he said there was no video out there, meaning that there was no cameras out there that could take video. And then Ann asked, was there any footage or video of the car? And he said, no. My assumption was because there was no cameras. So obviously you have to answer the question that they give you, right? You can't answer another question. It has to be the one that they're asking. So with that being said, if somebody asks, did you find footage of the vehicle? No. If there wasn't. Now, I did find a path on Google Earth and that takes you around and through the path that he went, and there is no cameras. I'm going to try to pull it up real quick. There's no cameras. If he would have gone and left Pullman and leaving that, if he would have left, the King Road Residence neighborhood onto Palouse River Drive, now, he would have had two options. He would have had option to turn left, head towards I-95, or turn right and head towards what eventually would become Pullman. And when I read the PCA and it said that, they didn't know which way he went, and I went on to Google Earth and I looked at I-95 and that entrance there, and I noticed that there was a street camera. So I thought to myself that, hey, if he would have went this way, they would have caught him in camera. So he probably went the other way. And the other way, I plotted out a whole different thing. I'm trying to pull it up real quick, where there is no cameras whatsoever. Now, when we looked at, what was it? Rex Humerman, he had not a manifesto, but like a blueprint of how to commit the crime and get away with it. One of the things that he was doing, and he's not a criminology student, PhD student with, knowledge that Bryan Kohberger has in investigation and how people are going to try to find you. he had in his own documents, and he's an architect, to recon for surveillance cameras. So I would have thought that, given Bryan Kohberger's background, had he committed this crime, he probably would have done the same, thus probably showing why there is went a route that there was no cameras. Now, I didn't know that those street cameras weren't they didn't record or they didn't save until and I'm trying to pull this up. There it is, finally.
I was saying until we had those that court hearing where they showed her the pictures and they were still pictures.
Yeah. And they were, go ahead.
And then they told her it's because they don't record. They were just the still pictures we were able to get at that moment.
Right. And that was from the Windy website. What they had said was that the cameras there in Moscow don't record and they don't save. However, there was screenshots of various times throughout the day on the Windy app. Now, as time progressed, those screenshots deleted. So had they looked at it maybe the first, November 14th, they would have had more, or maybe November 20th, they probably would have had more screenshots than they would have when they finally did look at it. And according to, I believe it was Payne or Mari, one of those two, it wasn't until like 3 months later when they discovered that there was those screenshots on the Windy app, which that's totally in Bryan Kohberger's benefit, because had they found that, I think that, that may have, those cameras probably would have pulled up a license plate. But here's that route. So here's what I was saying. What I was saying is, if Bryan Kohberger, let me make this bigger. If Bryan Kohberger is, 1 second, let me pull that off too. I don't want to. All right. If Bryan Kohberger heads facing left the way we're looking at it, this entire route here, and I went through it the entire way and then turned this way. There's no cameras here. None whatsoever. In fact, if I just put myself in a random spot, this is kind of what you see for most of the ride. Okay. Even in some of the more populated areas that you would have assumed. Let me see. All right. So let's go down here to like Genesee. So if I were to go right here to this intersection where you can turn into it, there's nothing there. There's no cameras. There's no nothing that says, oh, he went this way, or look, you would turn left to go to Genesee that way right there. There's nothing there. There's no cameras.
Honestly, at first, before you started showing these images the last time, I thought it was more wooded in that area.
Nah, there's nothing, dude.
Yeah, it's mostly just fields. And that makes sense because this school was an agricultural school too.
That's true. Now, here's the first camera that I came across on this route. I went through it all because I wanted to know, hey, if there's cameras somewhere else and they don't see him there, then what the hell's going on, right? These are the first cameras. And as you can see, this is not on I-95 in Idaho. This is at 307 East Blair Street in Uniontown, Washington. These are the first cameras that I was able to find that kind of faced the road, and there was a few of them. That was one of them right there. Now, do they face far enough to hit the road? I don't know. No.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna spoil it because I haven't read it yet.
I've only read to chapter 4, but I watched the Nancy Grace interview.
Yeah, you're not like Nancy Grace that sat in a hot car at a Costco parking lot to read it.
Nah, man, I got a life.
And Nancy says, her air-conditioned car, and I don't even think she's from a southern state where it gets, over 100 right now. So it's not that hot, Nancy. It ain't 114 in Texas, where you sit on your leather seats and your ass burns,
Nah, dude, go get one of those. I bought it off of my wife bought it off of Amazon. One of those, it's like an umbrella, but it's like like a shade cover thing for your front windshield, makes a huge difference, bro.
Yeah, I
Huge
had
difference.
the like the aluminum, the plastic ones, you know. I
Yeah,
don't know where the hell I left it. But I need one, man, because I got my car's got older leather seats in it, and you get in there, and for the first few seconds, it's like you're dancing to no music. My radio doesn't even work. I'm all dancing to no music. The
damn.
seat's too damn hot, which I'm gonna get fixed tomorrow.
And
Got new
and
radio.
the dance he was doing was the Macarena. Go look it up.
Yeah,
Bo
I
said,
was twerking.
there you go. Bo says Steve Gonsalves said that, and in an interview, we don't really know his sources, but why would he make that up? Did he ever hire a private investigator? I talked briefly to Steve, like through messages, about my interview with Bloom. He don't like the interview that I had with him on my channel. If you haven't seen the interview, we had actually Howard Bloom on the show. Yeah, just go back to a couple of shows ago and you can watch it. And he gives some more details than what we're going through tonight about Bryan Kohberger and the book. But yeah, he was on. Go check that out. But yeah, Steve didn't mention anything bad about it. I know that he doesn't like, I guess, what I would say is there was a rumor that had went out a long time ago, something about grand jury, and it kind of alluded that the Gonsalves family may have talked to somebody from the grand jury, and they said that that's not true. And Howard Bloom kind of made that illusion, from what I understand, which is where all this hostility comes from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. Somebody says Nancy's from Georgia was 100. Okay, but I thought Georgia was flooding right now, so but I guess they get hot right now.
It's filmed in Georgia. That's crazy. I didn't know it was filmed in Georgia. Let's see. So yeah, and so that it talked briefly about Brent Kopaka. I thought we should bring that up, and then it goes into the road trip. I actually had gone back for that. And in the book, though, like we mentioned, it talks about Bryan Kohberger. It mentions that he was heavy and he was bullied by girls. Then it mentioned that even when he lost weight, he became kind of a jerk, is what they described him as. Some females actually described him as a creep and a weirdo, I think is what they said, even after he had lost the weight. So, you know, he didn't find any luck with women before or after the weight loss. Do you think that could have something to do with this, Blue? I know that there's this whole theory that maybe perhaps he was an incel. You think that maybe he just could never find, maybe he just kept getting in his own way when it came to girls. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe, man, because it sounds like he can do a pretty cool party trick with some loose skin. That's what Howard said.
Oh man, I'm glad I wasn't drinking anything when you said that, Blue.
So I don't know, man.
I'm gonna clip that, dude. Somebody tell me what time this is. Oh man, Blue. Never have I ever had Discord ever. Oh, I have it. And for the members, those that are members, if you want to be on the Discord, there's a community page where you can go hit up the link there. It's only for members, so we can be on the Discord. I'm not on there as much as I should be. I'm trying to get my wife on it so that she can help me keep up with things, because she's the one that keeps up with things. But she's like, I got too much things to do. And so forgive me if I don't answer back. I try to get Blue to do it too, and he didn't want to either. I'm the only one that's on there.
Yeah, sorry guys. I've been busy lately, but
yeah, me too, man. But yeah, I will get more involved, and maybe I can talk my wife into getting on there and keeping me more up to date. Let's see.
Yeah, because we used to have Discord, but it was just a lot of extra stuff to get it on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there a trial date? No, I think on the 27th, right? Wasn't it tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow
is when the hearing is to set the trial. So I'll be interested to see, when that happens. Oh, put that back up, Blue. I didn't see it.
There you go.
Dude, that was hilarious, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Told you, man. I think I'm gonna try to hit up the comedy clubs that killed Tony. That's my next goal.
There you go.
I
Ali Books asks, "Oh, what happened with?"
think they can roast me pretty good, but I think I can get them back.
Get him back, Blue. Get him back. Ali Book says, Drunk Turkey Show, I want to know if they had searched the park. He could have put the knife or the clothing there. You know, if he truly did this, right? I think he did. That's my opinion. But, you know, if he truly did this, I don't think he would acknowledge somewhere that where the knife or the clothes ever were. You know, I don't think he would say that. Now, I do think that there's the possibility that maybe there was a plan to go out there and he went out there and maybe something got foiled and he wasn't going back out there anymore. And because he was there at one time, now he's using it as a an alibi, so to speak, because they talk about oh gosh, I was going to go somewhere with that and I can't think of it. But yeah, if let me pull this up. If he would have said that he went out there and that's where he took his stuff, there's a good chance that he could find some sort of evidence of that, and then he's screwed, right? So there's a theory in the book. Howard Bloom says that he believes that Maddie is the target. Now, I don't agree with Bloom about Bryan Kohberger driving around trying to, get the courage to do this. But I do agree with him that there's a high possibility that the target was Maddie. The killer entered the house through the rear sliding glass door, whoever it was. They had opportunity, as he mentions, to have either attacked Dylan or Xana to go down any one of those rooms. Instead, he goes straight up and then crosses into Maddie's room. Right? I think Xana's or Kaylee's room would have been closer to the where you enter upstairs. So when you look at where Maddie's room is located relative to what you can see from the outside, her room was facing that little alleyway between the house and the park and the apartment complex. And the back portion of her room, the window that had the big M in the window, you could see that window. And if it had the blinds open, you probably could see inside of that house from being parked in the parking lot back there from the apartment complex. So it does make sense that if Bryan Kohberger committed this crime, that he had visual of that one person. He knew where that one person was at, that he went straight in there for that one person. I have talked to some of the family members, different ones too, about their theory on, who was the target. And one of the theories that was presented to me that was thought of early on, that maybe perhaps whoever committed this crime, they only had one target goal. And the goal was just to eliminate that one target and then get out of there, leaving this huge mystery. One person dies in a house full of people and nobody knows how it happened. Right. And when I heard that, I was like, maybe. But now that Howard Bloom goes into what he says here, it does kind of make sense that was the target area. Now, Kaylee had more severe injuries to her. I'm assuming that, Maddie was probably attacked first and precisionally attacked in the right spot. So that way she couldn't scream or argue or yell or any of those things or fight back, like a lung. The lung collapses because it got stabbed, starts to fill up with blood. You might gurgle, which could make somebody think that somebody's playing with a dog, because it sounds like a dog, doing some slight growls. And, Kaylee probably woke up in that moment, and Kohberger couldn't be as precise. You have somebody awake, so he had to go as quickly as possible. That commotion probably alerted Xana downstairs and Dylan. That's what woke her up, right? According to the probable cause affidavit. Now, I suspect that the back sliding glass door was left open. We know that Xana commented on somebody's TikTok calling them a queen at 4:12 a.m. So she was still, up and alive at that point. If the killer opened the glass sliding door and left it open the entire time in efforts to not touch it multiple times, in efforts to decrease the amount or the likelihood of him leaving DNA behind, then there should have been a draft that would have gone through the house. And I would think that if Xana felt that draft, she would have came out, looked at it, and seeing a backsliding glass door open would be a huge clue that somebody's in the house. Maybe she even heard the commotion upstairs. I think that it's quite possible that Bryan Kohberger heard that and followed her down. She, unbeknownst to her, and snuck up behind her. And as she entered the room, he attacked her. Now, there's a thud that you can hear on the audio. That must have been a loud thud for it to have hit the floor and to have gone through the walls and to be picked up on an audio 50 feet away. It's not right next door. So I don't know if, somebody falling off of a bed, how close they are to the bed, if that would be loud enough for said thud. Or I don't know if you ever seen the back of or the bottom of the K-bar knife, but that thing is solid, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as she's walking in, he incapacitates her and then attacks the boyfriend. And then as she's waking up or coming back to, he's like, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." And then Dylan yells out to shut up. And in his panic, he finishes what he's doing, leaves very quickly. Maybe doesn't even see where Dylan is. If you hear something and you're preoccupied, how many times is your first response like, "What? Huh?" You didn't capture it because your attention was elsewhere, right? So he may have heard somebody yell, but maybe not known what they said. And he wouldn't take the chance on trying to find this person. I mean, he hadn't even gone to the first floor yet. So, he probably thought, "I got to get the hell out of here," which is exactly what ended up happening.
Yeah. Man, I just can't wait till the trial gets set and then we start hearing some more information to get justice, If it is him, he can get sentenced. If it's not, man, it's crazy, crazy, crazy outcome if it's not. But we need to keep trying to get justice for these 4 individuals, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Wayne says, "I thought all audio had been debunked." Oh, we're not talking about audio that we heard. I'm talking about what's in the probable cause affidavit that police have heard. This is in the probable cause affidavit that you can hear dogs barking at 417. You can hear a thud. You hear whimpers or the sounds of, whispering voices. You don't hear the sounds of somebody yelling for their life. You don't hear the sound of somebody kicking the ground. If you can hear a thud, you'd think you'd hear somebody kicking the ground if they were on the floor, kicking, for their life to be saved. If you want to know what that's like, a good representation of that is go watch the movie No Country for Old Men. And in that movie, the villain ends up strangling somebody on the ground and that person's kicking, and that's what you would expect to hear if there was some sort of fight for life. None of those things happen. Very stealthy, very stealthy. I'd heard on somebody else's podcast that they were like, they should have, Dylan and Bethany, they must have heard the screams and the yells. And I was like, Bethany and Dylan didn't hear the yells or screams. And we know that there's something else that didn't hear those yells or screams, and that was the audio 50 feet away. So maybe they didn't hear the yells or screams that you're alluding to because they didn't happen.
Well, I was gonna say, man, I work overnight, right? And sometimes my kids could be watching TV next door. I can't hear the TV if I close my door.
Yeah.
But my room is a little bit more soundproof than others because I did put some soundproofing tape on my door so you won't hear my kids watching or playing. Because without it, you would hear a little bit of it. But if I'm asleep in a hard sleep, deep sleep, I won't hear nothing unless it's my alarm.
Yeah.
At least for a good 4 hours, man, if I get in a deep sleep.
Yeah, especially if you've been drinking, it's been a couple hours. I mean, it's one thing if you just fell asleep, right? Like if you just put your head down, your eyes closed, and then boom, you hear something. That's one thing. But if you're been asleep for a couple hours, you're in REM, in that deep part of sleep, You ain't gonna hear anything. And yeah, guys, don't bring up other channels in here unless they're like in here and they're people that have been on the channel. We don't want to talk about anybody else here. This is about Bryan Kohberger and the case, not about anybody else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Let's see. I'm gonna turn this tilt off. But I don't know, man. There's so much more. I'm excited to get through the rest of this book, to see what else comes out of it. So far, it's interesting. I can say I don't agree with everything that's coming out. And most of the stuff that I don't agree with is the opinion stuff. You know, he thinks that Bryan Kohberger was, internally fighting with the decision to commit this crime, and that's why he was driving around 3 times. And I think that there was something that was interfering, like the light on from Xana waiting for her DoorDasher, right? Those type of things. The sources that he has when it comes to Michael Kohberger. Let me see if I can find the exact wording. I believe it was friends of relatives of Michael Kohberger. So let me just find the exact wording so that way I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. You know what I mean, Blue?
Yeah. No, I get it. And then I heard it's a good book. Nancy Grace thinks it's a good book.
Did you hear what she said when Bloom's like, "Oh, thank you," and she's like, I'm not usually accused of being nice, so I'm gonna take that with a box of salt. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Blue.
I said she reminds me like she reminds me a lot like of a Paula Deen, but like worse Paula Deen kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
She ain't gonna cook biscuits and gravy in the morning.
She's gonna talk your ear off in the morning, man. Like I wonder if like let's say she goes to Burger King or something, they screw up her order. She's like, Burger King screwed up my order. I couldn't handle that. You know what I mean? I know somebody had commented because we use her voice in the intro where it says, what do you call it? Where she goes, Bryan Kohberger in our intro. And it was funny because people were like, man, she says it with such disgust. I'm like, she kind of does.
It's just the way she talks. It's funny, but yeah, she has that like very serious tone sometimes.
Yeah. So I have this. Go ahead.
All you got to hear is say is hot tooey one more time.
So this is here, and I'm glad I caught this because after I was talking about, this is when Michael Kohberger had his son arrested, and he calls him. He says that his 19-year-old boy was out of control. It says here, Bryan saw things differently, but then again, it was not his time for understanding. Nothing made sense, and nothing was all that he could feel. He had forged a kinship with despair, and it mattered little to him that his behavior, combative one day, detached the next, took a toll on his family. Something beyond his control was playing with his head. Mind fizzle is what he called it. Interesting. And I'm still trying to find the wording here. I apologize, guys, about this. I should have highlighted it, but I'm pretty sure it said friends of Michael Kohberger's family members, something to that effect. Was where the evidence or the information came from. So it wasn't from anybody in the Kohberger family because it was friends of the family. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
And so apparently a lot of this information was things that supposedly Michael Kohberger and Michael Kohberger's family had said about the situation then and in the past.
Yeah. Which, it could be true. Sometimes you have to open up to friends and family to get like a second opinion of what your thoughts are going through your mind. So, and, I think it's a crazy situation because in one aspect of their life, they are also victims.
Oh yeah, dude.
Of their son's crime. So, I've seen a couple people like, oh, the family's horrible because this and that. It's not their fault.
Can't choose your family members.
Yeah. They are also victims as families of the victims are victims. There's one person to blame, and that's the person who committed the crime.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I mean, it's not like his family, I don't think his family had anything to do with his behavior. It sounded like Bryan Kohberger was embarrassed that his dad was a janitor at the high school that he attended. That goes into that in the book. And that he may have been acting out on those things out of embarrassment, which are some tendencies of some narcissistic individuals, right? That my father, who's trying to make a living, his profession is embarrassing. You know what I'm saying?
And I don't think it's embarrassing, man. A job is a job. Keep a roof over somebody's head and food on their table. And I get it as a kid. Maybe some friends might have made them feel like, oh, your dad's a custodian. But to me, a job is a job. It's a respectable job. And they think custodian's easy work. It's not.
Yeah,
it's hard work, man.
Yeah. I want to read this part real quick. It says, and this is referencing the fight that they had. Right from the start, Michael felt something was up. They had started to argue, and the sheer scale and intensity of his son's objections threw Michael for a loop. He felt ambushed by the force of Bryan's anger. The issue under heated debate was that the route home, in weeks before heading off from Pennsylvania, Michael had done his homework sitting on the computer console that was perched as usual on his kitchen table. He did a series of Google searches. The quickest, most logical drive he discovered was pretty much a straight line. They would plow east across the county along I-90. He had shared this itinerary with his son in a phone call around Thanksgiving, and Bryan had breezily agreed with the reasoning. Only now they were about to drive off from his son's Spartan single-room apartment in Pullman. Bryan had kicked the plan to the wayside. Instead, he insisted that they button hook south through Colorado, where they would then pick up I-70. It was an itinerary that made little sense to Michael. For one, Colorado in mid-December was snowy country. Now, there was no telling when the storm might suddenly come blowing from the Rockies. Now, I've been to Colorado a few times. I've been to Colorado in December, in around Christmas as well. And yeah, man, it gets bad, like really bad. So it's crazy. And he thought that this was the better route.
Yeah, his front wheel drive Elantra can handle it, man.
Yeah, and it goes on to say Bryan's 7-year-old Elantra without 4-wheel drive be slipping and sliding all over the road. He was concerned about that. So you're absolutely right. But it says here, goes on to say, but the more Michael tried to explain, the more Bryan dug in. It was a volatile dialect that Michael had suffered through too many times in the past. So he surrendered. You're the boss. He later told people, he said, deciding to diffuse things because he'd later share with family and that they'd pass on to friends. He had started seeing the sort of warning signs he knew all too well. So this is where it comes in. So it was, he later shared with family and they passed on to friends.
Yeah.
So maybe perhaps he told his wife and his wife told somebody, and that's the person who Howard Bloom is speaking to.
Yeah. It's possible. It's plausible.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes you gotta conversate with people to understand if that's normal or not. I know I do it sometimes and be like, man, I think this is a good idea. Because in my head, it's a good idea, but or maybe a coworker that she confides in, or a cousin, a friend. But yeah, man, this is we'll see how the book. You got to finish up the book and tell me more about it. I might watch more of Nancy's shows to try to see how she thinks of the ending of the book. She said she read it all. I just didn't finish the whole video either.
they didn't go into the ending in the book or in that podcast. I'm probably gonna. Friday we have True Crime Time on. Again, he's gonna be on. He was on last time. We're gonna talk about the evidence in the case. I'm probably not gonna get too much further into this book until after Monday. I have a huge test that I'm taking on Monday. Long story short, the project that I'm working on right now requires some sort of licensing that I have to go and get, and that's going to happen on Monday. So from here to there, I'm probably not going to try to put more information that's already overloaded into my brain. So I probably won't be reading the rest of this until after then, but I do intend on having this completely read by the time I'm back 1 week from today, and we are talking about it more in depth. I have a lot of things highlighted already. I know that with our interview with Howard Bloom, he talks about, and where I'm at, there's the pool party. It's in Moscow. It's in an off-campus place. You know, there's been a lot of talk about a pool party here and there. And so he says that
you can get it off Amazon.
Yes, you can get it off Amazon. He says that at this party, he's like dared, or he asks somebody like, hey, you dare me to go get these girls' numbers? And he does. But he never does anything with it, never calls them, never texts them. But apparently, according to Howard Bloom, and I'm assuming he talked to these girls, they started to receive, both of them, after giving Bryan Kohberger their phone number, calls in which the person who was calling privately or whatever was hanging up. Like, just call and breathe and then hang up.
That's pretty weird, man.
Yeah. I wonder if it's still going on now that he's in jail. Probably not. You know what I mean? They probably stopped around December 30th. If I had to take a guess.
He gets his one personal call and he does that kind of call. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. And Jane asked, do you think that the family will be subpoenaed? I'm going to let you answer this one first, Blue. Do you think the family's going to get subpoenaed?
I think, yes. I think there might be a questioning of the family, how his demeanor was when he came back after during the break.
Yeah.
And they're going to ask him about his childhood and the issues he's had. And his own defense might do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dirty Clean goes, serious question, not being rude. Are you gaslighting us and messing around? I'm not. I listened to how Megyn Kelly and other interviews this week. He was laughing too. He knows it's a story. I mean, somebody can laugh for a number of reasons. One is nervousness. You know, he's an author and a writer, not necessarily somebody that is a public speaker. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between writing things and be able to, you know, get information, and then also public speaking. And some of the platforms that he's on, they're pretty huge. They're big.
Yeah.
And this is what his job is. His job is to inform and write articles based on true events and in truth, things that are going on. I'm not going to say it's a completely true story, because there's a lot of it in there that is his opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, and this ain't the first book he's written. He's got a few out there, so he's pretty credible. So I don't think he's just jumping on the bandwagon to, you know, put a lot of misleading information out there just to get money, which some people do. Yeah, I think he truly likes to write about this crime, and he was there, what they consider the front line. He was there in the beginning.
Yeah. I don't, and the other thing is too, like, this is his job. This is what he does. This is his profession. If you go back and you watch the Moscow, Idaho press releases, go back and look at December 19th. Chief Fry looks kind of stressed out. He's got bags under his eyes. This was recorded either early that morning or the evening the night before. They talk about the White Elantra, and you can see his demeanor is one way. Go watch the one for December 20th. The bags are gone. He's got a smile. He's cheered. He's perked up. He's talking about how we are in charge of this investigation. We did this. We have this many detectives. He was basically saying, you know, we're the ones that found him, without saying we found him. If you go watch it in retrospect, watching it knowing that they caught him a couple of days later or arrested him a few days later, you can tell that at that point, and like as I've been saying for almost a year now, that's when they found out who the killer was. That's when they got his name.
Nancy wears the pantsuits at the house.
Yeah, she's an alpha. He wrote one called "Out There" about 1980s Pentagon UFO research group. I haven't seen that, but I'm interested now. As you can see, I'm flying in space right now.
Me too. The switch mid show.
Let's see. California Dreaming says, Drunk Turkey Show. I never noticed that about Fry until you mentioned it. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I've gone back and I've watched things and I looked at things and re-researched stuff. When I found out that December 20th was the day, I went back and looked at some things. I found out that after December 20th that they stopped asking, you know, about the White Elantra. They stopped, you know, putting out press reports. The next one was they had an arrest. You know, there's a lot of things that end up coming out around that same time. And then you go look at the warrants that were brought up. The first one against him was December 23rd, and it was basically off of what was publicly out there about him. There was nothing that was gathered between December 19th and December 23rd that they could not have found out between November 29th and December 20th. Like, they could have gotten those warrants based on the same information that was out there. It wasn't something that they discovered. The only thing that they discovered was somebody pointed in that direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. And somebody put that one. She's rude and obnoxious. Bryan Kohberger. I can't do her voice. You can do it better than me.
Yeah. Well, I do it better when I talk about Burger King. Well, guys, I want to say thank you to everybody. We just hit the hour and a half mark, a little bit after that, actually. We'll be back on Friday with True Crime Time. I also want to say real quick before we head out, our thoughts and prayers to the Harris family out in Corpus Christi. For those that aren't following that, we covered his disappearance a few months back. He had gone missing. It's the last thing that they'd seen was a Snapchat picture of him walking towards the street. Some remains were found earlier this week in a sewer lift station, and it's not sure if it's his or not, but it's the sewage system travels pretty close to where he was last seen, and apparently there was a few manhole covers in that area that weren't covered. So it's kind of grim right now. Thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family.
Yeah, and they'll identify it here, see if it is him or not. But if it is him, you know, at least they have an answer if it is him.
Yeah.
If it's not him, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to him. Hopefully they find him or find 100%. The remains soon. That's the craziest thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of crazy stuff that happens out there. That just I see videos all day, every day. I'm like, man, this world is cruel.
It sure is, man. I mean, some of the things that just happened, some of the people that, you know, the 12-year-old in Houston, little girl who lost her life at the hands of illegals. You know, Rachel Morin, you know, out there in Bel Air, you know, her life was taken also by somebody who wasn't supposed to be here illegally. You have so many like mass shootings here recently in the last couple of years. I think it's picked up, you know.
Yeah, today they were having the hearing of the parade shooter.
Yeah.
And he didn't show too much remorse.
Well, guys, we'll be back on Friday. We'll see y'all then. Please hit that like and subscribe. If you're still here watching and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Might as well. That way you don't miss a show. That being said, we're out.
Y'all take care, guys.